How good do you need to look for your next online meeting? This is MacVoices. This edition of MacVoices is supported by Clear. Get to the front of the line faster, safer, touchless. Get 2 months of Clear free at clearme.com/MacVoices. Welcome to MacVoices. This is the talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, our guest today is Jeff Carlson, who seems to be making a new career out of writing about webcams and the quality of webcams and all the different configurations that you can do so that you can look your very best in your next Zoom meeting, Skype meeting, Teams meeting. What else do we have, Jeff? Pick your meeting service and you just want to look your best, right?
Yeah, exactly. Totally. Yeah. So it's kind of interesting. I've fallen into this. So the source of all this, there's a company called Recubate, and we've mentioned them on MacVoices before, and they make a product called Camo, which lets you use your iPhone as a webcam. And it was, of course, especially timely last year when suddenly everybody was working remotely, and so they asked me to write some articles talking about, how to look your best on a video call, how to, set up lighting. And then that sort of rolled into, I think I've written 3 or 4 articles for them now. And what's been nice about this is, yes, part of the intention is to show their product and how well it compares and all of that. But to their credit, they're very focused on, let's not just do some marketing stuff. Let's throw out a lot of really good information. And so I think the last time you and I talked, we talked about webcams in general, like standalone webcams, and how they're really disappointing on a whole number of levels. And I wrote this big, long article sort of comparing a bunch of different models and explaining the shortcomings and the technology and all of that. And so they came back to me and they were like, that's great. What we'd really like is something that talks about using a DSLR or a mirrorless camera as your webcam. Because obviously, let's break this down real quick. You have a few different ways that you can use a webcam for these kinds of calls. If you have a laptop, you probably have a camera built into the lid. And in general, it's probably terrible. Or you can use like a standalone webcam. And those are nice because they really just plug in and you don't have to mess with them. Like you just say, I want to use this webcam. It's hanging at the top of your monitor or your laptop. And it's super simple, but the quality can be really iffy, and sometimes you have to really tweak them to get really good results. Another option is to use an iPhone because it's got a really good camera in it, and use a software like Camo that enables you to say, I want to use my iPhone camera as my webcam. But then there's like this other level, which is using either a DSLR or a mirrorless camera, a quote unquote real or traditional camera. And I say it's at another level because you can get much better results, much better images, much better color, depth of field, like a whole bunch of things we can talk about. Excuse me. And that's sort of the answer if you are in a position where you need to look good, right? I'm sure a lot of us have done a lot of Zoom meetings and things, and we're in our pajamas or a hoodie sweatshirt or, whatever. And, what's really kind of nice about all of this, finding silver linings in a year of working from home and pandemic and all that, I think, the expectation has gone down. So if you do show up in your pajamas or your, unicorn t-shirt or whatever, the people you work with, it's not going to be a big deal because that's kind of what everybody is doing. But every once in a while, you need to look better. Maybe you are an instructor. Maybe you are, raising money for something, either like a nonprofit or, raising venture capital, that sort of thing. Maybe you're going to be on TV. You want to have a better, you just want to look good, basically. And so that's the idea of going up to a DSLR. Well, that sounds great. You're like, hey, I've already got this camera that I take with me on vacation, or maybe I have like an older DSLR that's in my closet that I just don't use anymore, but it's been a hassle. I don't want to have to try to sell it, et cetera, et cetera. Well, I can just plug that into my computer and use that. That sounds like a great idea. Well, there are a whole lot of different bits and pieces on, how to make that work and how to connect it and what lenses to use. And so basically this new article that's on the Recubate site is a big, long explanation of, okay, you want to do this? Here's what you need. And here's what I found in testing a couple of different models and comparing it to, let me just hit my microphone here a few times, and comparing it to an iPhone running camo and a couple of different models. Because, you may say, yeah, I want the absolute best image that I can. But if you have to spend, 45 minutes setting it up each time, maybe you don't have a dedicated space in your house for this, then, it can be problematic. So that's what all of this was about. It was a fascinating project because it seems like it should be easier. I think a lot, with a lot of technology, everything seems like it should be easier. And then you start digging into it and you're like, oh, well, I have this great camera, except it keeps turning off after I've been in 2 meetings. Well, maybe it's overheating, maybe the battery doesn't last very long. X, Y, Z, all these different things. So that's where this came about.
Okay, so let's run through some things here. First of all, I'm a huge fan of Camo and what Recubate has done, because they are, as far as I'm concerned, and there are other solutions out there, and they're just fine. But Camo represents the gold standard, I think, for what they are trying to accomplish, and that is to basically use an iPhone as your webcam. So that, and I also really respect them because, they are not comparing it to the low end that we talked about originally. They're starting to compare it now to the much higher end and say, okay, if you need this, here's what Jeff found, but you can get almost there with using the software in your iPhone. Yeah. At this point, I think it may be important for us to say what we are using now, since folks are looking at us. So I am using a DSLR. I'm using a Lumix DSLR as my webcam through one of the I'm sorry, I can't say it. The Elgato plugs that turns the
Cam Link.
The Cam Link, thank you. Yes. That turns your HDMI into something that the iMac can digest. And just for the record, too, I'm using a Rode Procaster as my microphone. Jeff, I'm not sure what you're using. I think I see. Well, I'll let you tell me what your mic and your camera are.
Okay, so my microphone, which I put right here to make it sound good, and because I gesture wildly, I keep hitting it. So my apologies. This is a blue Yeti microphone that I got for podcasting ages ago. When I record my podcast, I use a different microphone, but it's in a different office. And so I was like, all right, well, I will just repurpose something in this converted guest room space, which is like the studio. And so that's what I have for audio. That's running into my MacBook Pro. And then for a camera, I have my Fujifilm X-T3, which is just the camera that I use for shooting everything. And I have connected to it an 18 to 135 millimeter lens that is currently set at about f4 in terms of the aperture. And we can talk about why that's important soon. And I also have the camera. You can buy an optional battery grip for it. And I bought this a while ago because it also lets you shoot in portrait orientation a lot easier. So if you're doing like a portrait session or event photography, it's nice to hold it this way instead of sort of angling your hand like so. But another benefit of this contraption is that it holds 2 batteries. So I have 3 batteries available to me. But more important for this purpose, it also has an AC adapter. So there have been times when I've set up my camera and I've done a presentation, and fortunately, when this happened, it was like right at the end, like the camera just started cutting out. Well, it's because it ran out of batteries. And so now I'm just, plugged directly into power, and I don't have to worry about whether or not the power is going to run out.
And thank you for making that point, because I neglected to answer or to say that's something too, that because this is my dedicated webcam. This is what I record all the MacVoices with. I don't think I've ever shot a still picture with it. That's crazy, but that's just the way it's worked out. But I too have one of the AC adapters so that it doesn't run out of battery in the middle, or I don't forget to charge it or something, because that's really annoying when that happens. I think it happened once to me, and it's like, that's it. I'm buying the adapter. Never want to have this happen again.
Totally. Well, and especially, so this plays into a couple of things that I get into in the article, which is, you need power because, pretty much all of these digital cameras, they're designed to just run off batteries, and you take them out and you turn it on, you shoot a few shots and you turn it off, or maybe you shoot some video and then turn it off. And so, having a battery will last you, 400, 500, 600 shots, depending on how you're using it. And that's fine. But they aren't necessarily designed or primarily designed as just a static, always-on video source. And that's when you run into issues like we're talking about now. Now, not every camera has an optional battery grip. And honestly, this battery grip, I think, was, I want to say, maybe $300. So it was worth it for, some photographic work that I do. But I don't know that I would spend an extra $300 just to, have this propped up as a webcam if I wanted to do that. And so another thing that you can look into are basically dummy batteries. And it's a battery that fits into the slot of your camera, but then has an AC power cord coming out of it. And so the camera thinks that it has a regular battery, it's just being fed from something else. And what's also nice about that is in many cases you avoid the heat problem, because as you're recording and you're using the battery, the battery is going to warm up because it's expending energy to power the camera. Well, that's going to expend heat and can lead to overheating a camera. Well, in some cases, if you have one of these dummy batteries, that's not really a case, because you don't have all that battery material. It's basically like just a, plastic shell with some contacts that transfers the power through. And those can be, if you want to get a really good one, it can cost you $150. And that's the type of thing where, if you're using it to shoot studio video, that kind of stuff, sort of more on a high level, I think more commonly they're like maybe in the $20, $30, $40 range. And the one thing I will say is make sure you do some research on it, though, because, as with Amazon and a bunch of other places, there are cheap versions out there, and you're like, hey, I got this for $12, and then it's not made very well or doesn't have good components, and suddenly you've fried your $600, $1,200 camera. So you got to be wary of that.
Today's edition of MacVoices is supported by Clear. Get to the front of the line faster, safer, and touchless with Clear. You know what's amazing about Clear? It creates a frictionless experience at the airport and other places. That makes travel easier, and when it comes to travel, easier is always better. With Clear, all you need to get through the airport security line is your face and your eyes. Clear works that way, the same way, at airports, stadiums, and more. Enrolling is fast and easy. Get started online and finish at the airport with the help of a friendly Clear ambassador. No appointment necessary. And once finished, you can use Clear right away to get to the front of the line. And now you can share Clear with family and friends by adding up to 3 people to your account for only $50 per person per year. And kids under 18 can tag along for free. In a couple weeks, I'll be headed back to the airport for the first time in almost 18 months. I'm looking forward to the trip, and I'm looking even more forward to getting to the head of the line faster with Clear. Clear is the absolute best way to help you get back to what you love. They have locations in over 35 airports across the country, making it easier, safer, and faster to reunite with loved ones or take that much-needed vacation. And it works great with PreCheck, too. And right now, for a limited time, you can get your first 2 months of Clear for free. Go to clearme.com/MacVoices and use the code MacVoices. That's Clear, CLEAR, me.com/MacVoices, and the code MacVoices for your first 2 months of Clear for free. clearme.com/MacVoices and the code MacVoices. Sign up now and plan your next trip. Thanks to Clear for their support of MacVoices. Yeah, my rule of thumb on just about anything that involves power is I'm going to buy a name that I know. I'm not going to buy the no-name thing. As we do this transition to USB-C, I mean, that's especially important. Like you say, with the camera, I mean, I don't want to be plugging something cheap into any of my really good hardware because I feel like it might cost me more money than I saved by a multiple of 10 or 15. So,
it only takes once.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
So, and now this also brings up another question that I go into a lot, and it's the question of setup, because obviously, we're thinking about image, right? And if I look at my image here on my screen, I have some external LED lights set up. I've got this light in the background. I've got sort of a nice little studio looking thing. I'm well lit. I have controlled lighting, and the camera is giving me probably 1080p output, and it looks good. And if looking good was the only consideration, it'd be really easy to just say, do this. But so much of this is also dependent upon setup. Now, in your case, because this is your camera that you always use, I imagine that not only have you only taken one or none still photos with it, it probably just stays right where it is 99% of the time, right? Like it's just mounted in front of you in your computer, right?
It is. Actually, it's funny you bring that up, because until recently, I just had a little mini tripod on my desk. And then a friend suggested this little mini boom arm thing that I just absolutely love, because now, folks, you can't see it, but my camera is right in the middle of my iMac screen. It's positioned obviously in front of it, but so it's blocking part of the screen. The boom arm lets me swing that out of the way when I'm not using it, but also then swing it back pretty much into exactly the right position. And that for the use case I have, that's perfect. It's not an expensive thing. It's like $20, but it solves my problem in a big way. So Jeff makes an excellent point about exactly what is it that you're going to do with this and how often are you going to do it.
Yeah. Well, and also placement. So, like actually having your camera right in front of your computer, that's brilliant. Because if you'll notice, every once in a while I'm looking down because I have, so I'm right here, and then I can actually tilt my laptop screen. You can see this is where my laptop screen is, and I have it set up on a couple of books just to raise it up a bit. But if I wanted to position my laptop screen so that I was looking at the screen, but it looked like I was looking at the camera, like you'd probably, see more of the screen, and that doesn't really look very good. And so, I'm basically looking at the camera the whole time and occasionally glancing down to make sure that, we're still connected. You're not making funny faces at me, although you can. That's your prerogative, absolutely. And so it's also this question of, all right, do you have space in your setup where you can set up a tripod? So my camera is actually on a tripod, but I'll say it's probably maybe 5 or 6 feet away, maybe 5 feet away.
Wow. Okay.
So it's also that consideration of all right, where is it going to be? And to be honest, I mean, just coming on here with you was a perfect example, because I did not have the camera set up. I had been shooting pictures with it the other day. And so I had to come down here before we started, set up the camera, make sure the angle was good, make sure that I was in focus, make sure, I have an iPhone here set up, make sure that was set up, turn on my lights. And so, for me, it wasn't that big of a deal because I tend to not do a lot of video meetings. But if, your job means that you're on 3 or 4 meetings a day, or maybe you're like doing all day stuff, you don't want to have to mess with all that. So, exactly. Yet another consideration. There's so many pros and cons and evaluations of, I want to look really, really good, but am I going to go crazy every single time because I have to reconnect everything and blah?
No, I definitely don't want to steal your thunder here, and I'm not sure if you're going to talk about this, but since we've been talking about the setup and the position of the camera, are you going to? Do you cover looking at the camera?
No, I don't. Other than, yes, it's good to look at the camera.
Thank you. Yes, there's professional advice. Look at the camera. No, I bring it up because since we're comparing this to camo, the idea that you're using your iPhone, the image is right there, and the camera is right there. So you're going to be looking maybe just an inch or two to the right or left, depending on how you set it up, of the actual camera. Jeff and I both are having to look at the camera right there. That's the camera, but my screen is all around it. And Jeff's screen, of course, is down below. So it takes a little bit of training if you use this kind of setup to, your peripheral vision sort of starts to have to do a little extra duty. So if Jeff were making funny faces at me, I wouldn't know exactly what funny face, but I could tell that he was doing it. See, like there, I knew he was doing that.
I would never. Nope.
No, never. No. But I'm looking right at the camera. So that may be a significant consideration if you become suddenly uncomfortable with the idea. For right now, if I want to look at Jeff, I've got to shift my gaze just that much. So, and now you can tell I'm looking at Jeff, but I'm not looking dead square at the camera. And Jeff is now looking down at his computer. He's not looking dead square at the camera. So it's a little thing, but if you really want to be just like if you're in person, looking at that person right in the eye, it's one extra little piece of training you will have to undergo. Yeah.
There's actually a neat hack for this. It was out of the scope of my article, but there's a thing that you can do where, and it's kind of brilliant. So you can get, let me reach and grab, and hopefully not knock anything off of my desk. So I have this little external monitor that I can plug into my camera. And so, if I'm recording a tutorial or something like that, I can have that plugged into my camera so that I can see myself, right? And that sometimes helps. Actually, it probably would have helped a little bit today, but that's here nor there. Well, and I want to say this cost maybe $100. They're absolutely, better, bigger, expensive ones, but, just something kind of basic. Now, if you have a teleprompter, so a teleprompter setup, so your camera is behind an angled sheet of glass. And normally what you would do is the camera shoots through the glass, and then you would have like an iPad or something below, and the image is flipped, so that if you need to read from a script or look at notes, that shows up on the sheet of glass. But because it's mirrored in such a way, the camera doesn't see that; it just sees you, and so you're looking at the camera. Well, there's a thing you can do, which is you take one of these monitors and you put it in your teleprompter setup and set the monitor to just show what's on your computer screen. And so when you do that, then you are literally looking at all of your participants in your meeting, and they just see you. So, the camera is just shooting right through them, but you're, getting direct eye contact because you are looking at the camera every time. Again, like what I just said is 4 levels of complexity above even what we're talking about today. But if it's something where you are always on meetings and, you hate it when people are looking down or they're looking off to the side, and you don't want to project that, like you want to say, no, look, I'm engaged, I'm listening to you, then, and especially in, circumstances where you're talking to somebody important, or you're raising money, or you're, trying to convince people to, give to your educational foundation or whatever. That little difference can make that little difference in how you have it set up can make a big difference in how people see you.
Agreed. And since I feel like that's a completely legitimate description, Jeff, because if we're sitting here talking about using a DSLR as your webcam, you are probably shooting for something above the norm. The guy that, is just flipping open his laptop lid and attending a Zoom meeting. So yeah. I frankly, I'd never heard that hack, but it makes perfect sense. And now it's one more thing I need to try.
It's really
Thanks,
cool
Jeff.
and clever. Okay, now you have to redo your entire setup.
Yeah, Jeff's giving me homework now, which is not the reason I want him on the show.
I know. It's either go do this or go buy this. That's the kind of homework that I end up doing. Yeah. Going back to connections, you mentioned that you have an Elgato Cam Link that's connecting your camera to the computer, and that is probably the best and easiest way to connect your camera. But again, once the pandemic hit and suddenly everybody was working from home, all or most of the big camera manufacturers realized, hey, we can make little utilities so that you can just plug your camera into your computer via USB and just have a free software solution for that. So like Fuji has I want to say Fuji X Web. That's the wrong name. But anyway, Fuji X Webcam, I think it's called. There's a free Canon utility. Nikon has theirs. Sony has theirs. And that was also something that I tested because obviously that's the easiest thing. You have a USB cable, you can plug it into your camera, and in theory, it just works. Well, I ran into a bunch of different issues. The Fuji one was surprisingly really poor in terms of my connection and the image quality. Canon's worked pretty well. Some of them are even still in beta. And so it's one of those things where, yeah, you could probably get it to work, especially if you just have nothing else. But getting some sort of little hardware adapter, they're called capture cards, does make a big difference. And actually, and to my surprise, let's see if I have it here. So again, at the beginning of the pandemic, when everybody suddenly needed to be online, you could not buy an Elgato Cam Link for anything. Like they were sold out everywhere. If you could find them, they were twice as expensive. So I think it goes for like, I want to say $129 maybe is the regular, or maybe even $99. And I was seeing them for, $350 if you could get a hold of one. And so there are a whole bunch of other little ones that popped up. This is USB 3.0 video capture HDMI 4K. It's from some unknown Chinese company. There are like 10 companies that make this exact box. And I think this was like maybe $50 or $60. You can get little itty bitty tiny HDMI video capture cards that are, even down to $20. And to my surprise, even though this is like a 4K capture card, this one is just like the small one is just 1080p. The internal components make a big difference too. So I used these when I didn't have anything else. And then I finally got a Cam Link, a few months ago when they were back in stock. And I was surprised at how much better the Cam Link performed in terms of getting a clean signal and good light quality and good resolution. So that's another thing to look out for.
So are you saying, Jeff, the shocking revelation that you get what you pay for?
I believe that is what I'm saying. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of funny because some Chinese knockoff things are like the exact same components. They're just branded in a generic way or whatever. And so I wasn't expecting a huge difference. But I don't know enough about the internal electronics, but the Cam Link, which I can't show you because it's plugged in, it's just like this little pass-through dongle. But the images that I got and the video that I got was noticeably better. I should also point out, when you go take a look at this article, there are a bunch of sample photos and sample videos and, yet more pictures of me that I'm sure my mom loves, but I don't know if everybody else is. And I did manage to convince my wife to pose for a few pictures, and a friend of mine in Portland helped me with a video issue. And so it's not entirely me, which is good, but it's that you'll be able to go and see all these comparisons that I made and be able to notice, like, for example, depth of field. Okay. Like, another advantage to using a DSLR or a mirrorless camera is you have a choice of lenses, and the lenses, you can have lenses that have, very wide open apertures. And when you have a wide open aperture of, like, say f1.4, you get a very shallow depth of field. So like I could be in focus and everything behind me could be really soft and blurry. With, a laptop webcam or most of the standalone webcams, or especially an iPhone, you just can't do that because, like, the sensors are so small and there's just not much space between the sensor and the lens. And so the idea behind an iPhone camera is it's going to try to get everything in focus. And just because of the physics of it, that's probably what's going to happen. Well, if you look at my image here, there's not a whole lot of separation. Like I said, I'm set at about f4.0, I think 4.2 maybe. But you can see, like, the bookshelf behind me, like that old camera at the top is just a little bit out of focus. The book titles are a little bit out of focus. And when our eyes see that in pictures, we register that as a more professional look because you have more depth to the image. Well, I'm sure you've seen, Zoom has a blur background feature. And it looks like someone poured water on the background. It's so blurry and so overdone. And so then you have to think, do I want to look like I've just used the zoom option because it's super obvious? Or do I want to use a DSLR and a decent lens that will give me some of that separation without, with it looking natural rather than super artificial?
This is the part where you can tell that Jeff is a photographer and I'm not, because he can tell you what his f-stop is. I have no clue. When I connected the camera, I set it up. I played with it a little bit with the lens that was on it. I found something I liked and I stuck with it. And it's one of those things that I want to go back and say, let's try this lens and do that. And I just never get around to it because this serves me so well. But same thing, Jeff. I would think that the viewers can see my background is just a little bit blurry. It's not terribly sharp. It's also not overdone. But I would like to think you're going to have a hard time reading anything that I might have up on a screen in back of me. All that top secret confidential information that I usually have behind me. So yeah, that is one advantage, that if you have a whiteboard or something behind you, I'm not saying that folks couldn't maybe decipher it at some point, but it's going to be a lot more difficult for the casual user to do so. Yeah.
Well, and let's consider context too. But part of the reason for doing this, and in photography, part of the reason to have like a blurry background is it's not because you're trying to hide everything behind you. I mean, obviously you could just put up a curtain or something behind you. That would be fine. But the idea is you want, sort of two things are going on. One, because it's more of a photographic or cinema look, I think when we see a scene where the background is a little bit blurry, it just, it looks higher quality. It looks more deliberate. But the second thing about it is it puts the focus on your visual focus on what's in focus. So, again, let's assume that I'm here to pitch you because I really want you to invest in my company, or I really want you to give money to my charity. Well, as we all know, we've done lots of different Zoom meetings and things like that. We've seen reporters and experts on TV who have had to call in to news shows and talk shows from their own houses. And what happens? They come up, and the first thing you do is you see them, and the second thing is all right, what's in their house? What's on their bookshelf? Ooh, let's look back here. And, because I mean, we're all naturally curious, and I don't think it's not like you're invading their space because they're opening it up to you through the camera. But, it would be very, very easy for somebody to just sort of get lost in, oh, I remember reading that book in college. I wonder if this person thinks this. And then by that time, you've missed my pitch, and my presentation to you has not been successful because I had too much distraction, whether it's books or, dirty laundry or dishes or who knows what. And so having that separation is also just a way to, acknowledge that there's a background, give it a pleasing look, but also, stay focused on me because I am the one who is talking and gesturing and being the center of the conversation.
Excellent point. And that's something that you as a photographer would think about. That not the what's on the bookshelf, but the idea that keeping the individual in focus or you in focus helps keep the other side's attention focused on you as opposed to some of those other things. So yeah. See, folks, he's a professional. Jeff Carlson is just getting warmed up with some of his tips and tricks on how to look your best for Teams meetings, Skype meetings, Zoom meetings, and any other online meeting that you have. Next time, we talk about some hardware and some techniques that can help you look your best, which is obviously something that you want to do. That's next time on MacVoices, and I hope you'll join us. Until then, and as always, I'm Chuck Joyner. Thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our Facebook group or like our Facebook page, and get more out of your Apple tech with MacVoices Magazine, free on Flipboard and on the web. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us through either our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/MacVoices or by making a one-time donation via the PayPal link on our front page and in the show notes of each episode. You will join these fine people who help bring you MacVoices. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CacheFly at cachefly.com.